Physical records management, a modern approach. We appreciate you joining us today, and the first thing I always like to do is take a second and introduce our speakers. My name is Shayna Horka, and I work in product marketing here in Gimmal, and I'm joined by our key speaker today, solution architect Tim Butler. Now, before we get started, I have just a few housekeeping items to go through. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, please feel free to submit them in the Q&A section on your screen, and we're going to answer as many as we have time for at the end of the presentation. Today's presentation will be an hour long as opposed to some of our 30-minute topical webinars because we will be showing a demonstration in this one. There will be at least one poll question that you will see pop up, so please keep an eye out for that. Your responses are anonymous. And as always, if you have any technical difficulties, please let us know so we can assist you. So to kick things off, I have just a couple of slides to tell you a little bit about Gimmal and how we can help you take control of your information with our suite of solutions. Gimmal is a records, information management, and governance software company founded in 2002. Our goal is to help you achieve your information governance goals by providing solutions that balance the value your information provides with the risk it also presents. Whether you're trying to discover information in unstructured data sources, migrate from legacy systems, or comply with policies across multiple repositories, Gimmal can help you achieve your information governance goals. We have a client success team and a global network of partners that deliver solutions in conjunction with our key partners like Microsoft and SAP. Gimmal's family of software products work together to let you create an efficient digital workplace. Our comprehensive solutions include migration, file analysis, electronic and physical records management, document management for SAP, and for those of you who are not new to our webinars, you may have noticed a slight name change in our products as well as a logo change. They are the same products that you know, just with a more simplified name for your benefit. But without further ado, I'll hand it over to Tim so he can get started.
All right. Thank you, Shayna. I appreciate that. And guys, thank you everyone for attending. Appreciate your taking some time out of your day to spend it with us. Guys, as Shayna did mention, we are going to actually go through a demo of the Gimmal physical product. And to that end, because we are limited in terms of time, it is very unlikely I'll be able to show you everything I want to. And I want to just invite you via the chat or the private messaging system. If you would like to see a much more personalized demo, we would very much be glad to do that. I can tweak the demo quite a bit, though, and it would be very super helpful for us. And so we're going to bring up just a poll here. If you wouldn't mind taking just a minute, let us know what industry you hearken from. That will help us and help me to drive the rest of the demo. And while you're taking just a moment to do that, guys, I will mention that the Gimmal physical product is really installed in across the world, both public and private sectors. Within the private sector, really every vertical, as you would probably imagine or guess, the requirements for physical records, although there are some nuances industry by industry, probably about 90% of those are shared across the platform. And so it looks like we're finalizing there. Take a quick look at our tabulation, and fascinating. Yeah, guys, the public sector, 50%. That's exactly what I expected. That historically is actually true of the Gimmal physical and the legacy product. It's about 50% public and then 50% private. And excellent. For those of you that answered other, we really would appreciate it if you would let us know via chat what industry you come from. That would be helpful to us as well. All right, so we can go ahead and close that if you don't mind. Austin, close our poll results there. And while you're doing that, we're going to jump over. All right, so guys, hoping everyone is now seeing the Gimmal physical interface, and I'm going to give you a lot of information here. Again, the pace will be pretty fast today, but again, please submit your questions. If we do have some time at the end, we'll do whatever we can to answer your specific questions. Guys, I'm going to spend just about 2 minutes up here talking technology for those of you interested in that end of things. that the product itself, it's a technical, from the technical perspective. I'm going to give you the technical overview. We'll come back to the slideshow in a minute and give you a couple more highlights on the product itself and how we fit into the industry. But technically, I wanted you to see the application here and give you that information. Guys, it is what's known as a thin client or a browser-based application. You can either purchase the software, install it on premises, or it can live on the cloud. It is browser agnostic. Use any browser you like whatsoever, i.e. Edge, Chrome, Firefox, Safari. If you do go on-prem with it, it does require a Microsoft SQL Server as the back-end database. Very quickly, guys, also under that technical heading, I do want to mention for those of you that are coming out of a legacy system where you've got barcodes that have already been printed, they're already on your boxes, your shelves, your files, as well as barcode scanners that you may have in place. In all likelihood, you can continue to use those. There's no need to reprint any of those. You can continue to use what you have. Now, I do want to bring you back in to the slideshow for just a minute and then jump back into the application and give you some much more details. Guys, I want to address a couple of just overall topics here. Number one, that physical records are going away. Guys, it's just not true. I sometimes say that physical records, guys, they are the AM radio, if you will, of records management, right? You go back 100 years or so, AM radio was the greatest thing since sliced bread, or at least since the telegraph. And about 20 years after AM came out, we had FM radio come to market. When FM came along, everyone said, hey, that's going to be the death of AM radio. Well, it turned out, actually, the AM radio continued to grow, both in terms of listeners and number of stations. Another decade later, TV became publicly available. Same basic point there. When TV came along, folks said, hey, there's no need for radio. That will go away. Well, we all know that's not the case. Fast forward a few more decades, you eventually had XM radio or satellite radio. Surely that would be the end of AM. And guys, it actually turns out that all the way through the end of the last century, the AM radio continued to grow, at least in the United States, both in terms of stations and listeners. The analogy is a pretty good one, right? So although the growth of paper records has begun to slow down, the actual amount of paper records, there are still a lot out there, just like there's a ton of AM radio stations out there as well. Guys, if you were part of the demo last time, the webinar rather, I should say, we covered in detail some compliance issues and focused really upon this topic. And just want to make a quick comment here. In the end, guys, the reason you're probably attending this webinar, the reason you're interested in physical records management is because more or less you kind of either need to or you want to, right? Like every area of life, there's basically two motivations. There's external. So when it comes to compliance, you've got regulatory concerns, you've got legal concerns that more or less force you to implement a records management solution. But besides the external, there is, of course, the internal. From an organizational perspective, you want to implement a records management solution for the benefit you will derive from that. If you'd like to see more detail about these compliance reasons that we covered last time, I invite you to check out the Gimmal website. Nice little link there where you can go back and look at the webinar we went through last time. And then, guys, right before we jump back into the demo itself, just a quick list here that we're going to cover most of these topics. As I've mentioned, we're just not going to have the time today to get into all the detail. We'll do the best that we can. And again, I want to emphasize, I'd be very eager to do customized, personalized demos for each one of you. Just let us know. We'd be glad to do that. So without further ado now, let's jump back in to the application. So guys, here's what I want to do today. Number one, I'm going to make some overall points about the application. Then I'll start clicking buttons and show you exactly how the software is used. First point I want to make, guys, really important, the application interface itself, right? And by that, I mean these tabs that you see. And obviously, as I click from tab to tab, you'll see the information below that change as well. Guys, this is all configurable. It's important to note that the application is an off-the-shelf product. We do not need to customize this product. The pedigree of this software technology goes back more than 30 years via Gimmal's acquisition of the former Infolinks product. So there's just a broad feature set built into it already. But when I say it's configurable, that really means you can have whatever tabs you need in your application without any custom work being done whatsoever. What you're seeing in front of you, this is based upon a real client's application. We've just kind of cleansed the data for demo purposes. But a quick common example is this, right? Everybody tracks boxes. Most folks are tracking files. Sometimes we have clients that are tracking microfilm. So it's very easy for us to add a whole new tab into the application called microfilm, so you can track those as well. Related to all that, guys, on each of these tabs, the metadata used to describe the item type is also completely configurable. And guys, any data types you've ever worked with, whether it's very large text fields, numeric fields, date fields, you name it, the software will indeed support that. Couple more quick overarching points, guys, just basic stuff, but I want to make sure I don't miss it. I briefly mentioned a little earlier that you can move your barcode labels that you've been using. You can continue to use those without having to reprint. I'll mention day forward, of course, from the Gimmal physical interface. You do have the ability to print barcode labels directly out of here. Just as a quick example of that, when you do print your labels here, guys, really you can print labels of just about any size or information on those labels that you want whatsoever. So here's one quick example of barcode labels, black and white, that could be printed out. You may have situations where you have actually more than one label design, as they're called. So you can print different size, different type labels out. And guys, these can be printed to any network addressable printer. Whatever your computer can see, you then have the ability to print those labels. Very quickly, for those of you, and I'm going to jump now to the Files tab itself, but for those of you who are tracking files or file folders, as well as those black and white labels, you can also actually print color-coded end tab labels out of the software as well. So just laying the framework here, guys, that when it comes to the overall features that most folks need for physical records management, labels, barcodes, barcode scanners, all of that is covered as part of the software solution. Now, I want to kind of start to dig in here, guys, and talk about the basic functionality and get you through that, and we'll get to as many nooks and crannies as we can. And the way I want to slice and dice this today is, number one, I want to talk about your data, how you get data into the software. Guys, there's various ways to do that. There is, of course, a bulk import capability, and we won't have the time today to get into all those details, but to give you at least a little bit of show and tell, in this demo application, we've got various what are known as import profiles. What these import profiles allow you to do is, whether part of the initial conversion or day forward, as you perhaps gain other records data, or you acquire other companies, or whatever the example might be, whatever data sets are available to you, if you can reduce those to flat file CSVs, then of course you can import that data in bulk fashion into the software. By the way, guys, that import can either be brand new data records or it can be updates to existing records. Related to that, on the contemporary technology front, the software does also support web services. So if you've got some other line of business application that's also contemporary, you can communicate back and forth with Gimmal Physical via those web services. Now, outside of those sort of bulk import capabilities, I want to take you through, in terms of data creation, that topic, how things look. And actually, I'm going to bring you to the Boxes tab, a little more helpful here. So let me jump over there and come to the Create page for the boxes. Here's the important points to note, guys, about data creation within the software. As I mentioned up front, I'm going to give you a little more detail. We will work with you to design every screen of the application exactly to your specifications. So first of all, whatever legacy system you're coming out of, that's a logical starting point. But you should be looking for a solution, right, that can not only mirror what you already have, but can also add to it or remove from it as necessary. You can actually have as many or as few fields as you want, again, of whatever data types you want. Second important point to note is, you noticed probably when I landed on this Create a New Box page, a lot of the fields were already pre-filled. That's because the software makes use of default values. Just know that pretty much as a one-time effort, every user of the software as a one-time effort, they come in, they fill in the fields the way they want, they click on set defaults, and they have the values that they use most of the time. Now, bunch of details here in this particular application, just a really minor point, but on various tabs, you can set the software up to either auto-generate these unique IDs, or you can also set it up to receive it from data entry. The common example, of course, is for those of you working with offsite box vendors, you would use the box IDs or barcodes that they provide to you. I'm going to grab a couple pieces of data here and spend just a moment because it is very important. We'll touch upon this later as well. And what I'm doing here, guys, I'm creating a box. I'm saying, hey, it's owned by this particular business unit. Now, you wouldn't know this ahead of time, but business unit, retention schedule are in a parent-child relationship. So although there's actually, guys, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of retention schedules or rules housed in the software, we're only displaying the ones that are logical children of the selected parent. So it gives that end user a much more chance at being successful of picking the right one. As you would guess, when it comes to retention schedule and disposition functionality, classification rules, if you will, the software supports both time as well as event-based record series. I'm going to do for our example here this afternoon using this GAD 160, which is a time-based record series. I've already entered some data, guys, via defaults to save us a little bit of time. So I can now go ahead and click on Save and View and highlight a couple more features about data creation itself. So if you were paying really close attention there, guys, right, I was putting a box into the system. I included some metadata. I said specifically this box was full of materials from October of 2020. I associated this box, guys, to a 7-year time-based record series. So the software said, great, it's time-based. Take the most recent record in that box reflected by this through date, the 10/31, copy that into the trigger date, and then do the math, add the 7 years, and calculate the scheduled destruction date, in this case, 2027. Now, guys, had I associated this box to an event-based record series rather than time-based, the software would not have auto-filled the trigger date. It would not have auto-calculated scheduled destruction date. Rather, we would have waited for you either at point of data entry or sometime into the future to supply us what that trigger date is, right? And these trigger dates can be termination of employee, end of contract, close of case, whatever it might be. It's the date from which the clock starts running. And then at that point in time, the software would have calculated the scheduled destruction date. There is, of course, a third option reserved for the records managers, the administrators of the system, that allows you to specify, hey, software, I know you house the rules for how long we're going to keep stuff, but in this case, I want to override and tell you exactly what this should be. So again, guys, I know we're moving at a very quick pace here, but wanted to give you a quick overview of data creation. What we did there, guys, was actually create a single record. I want to highlight one more feature really quick that's called carry forward in the software. And the way carry forward works, and hopefully you'll notice the difference here, what carry forward does is that if you're already focused on a record like I was just a moment ago, and from that vantage point you launch into the create page, what the software will do is actually, quote, carry forward all the values from the previous record that you were just on. Then this allows you to write very quickly, just change the 1 or 2 values that you want to change. And then rather than clicking save and view like I did a moment ago, here's where you could click on save and new, and hopefully you get the idea. The software will go through the same routine it did before, but this time it'll land you right back on the create page, letting you yet again enter one more data record. So from the application interface, a really nice way to get data in, lots of data in with very few keystrokes. Now, guys, under this heading of just data overall, I want to mention a couple of really nice tools. Specifically, I'm going to focus your attention on this feature called bulk update, as well as one called search and replace. We won't take the time to do examples here, but just quickly explain. What bulk update allows you to do, guys, is you can select as many records as you want, right? It could be 10,000 records. And you could say, hey, Gimmal Physical, I want you to change the value in this field from whatever it was to this new value. It's a really nice tool for changing lots of data all at once. Similar to that is a feature called search and replace. Like bulk update, it allows you to change lots and lots of data records all at once. Unlike bulk update, it does not change the entire contents of a field. Rather, it changes a string of data. So let's say you've just got, the letters A, B, C somewhere in your notes field throughout your application. You could use the search and replace to change all those A, B, Cs to X, Y, Z. And then kind of a really powerful yet scary features here, guys. I want to mention them quickly. There's something called bulk delete, bulk expunge. It is, of course, all of this functionality is governed by security within the application. So as you would guess, it's pretty much only the special few that even get access to these features here. But it is a way, if you've got dirty data in your system or data that someone imported erroneously, it's a really nice way to get rid of lots of data all at once. This, of course, is independent of the whole retention disposition functionality, which we'll get to just a bit later in the demo itself. So some data creation examples, data manipulation examples there with bulk update, search and replace, the bulk delete, and the bulk expunge. And then under this heading, guys, of just data itself. So we briefly talked about getting data in. We talked quickly there about ways to manipulate that data. I want to mention here for just a moment how you would go about getting data out of the system. Really important to note, guys, that every single piece of metadata in the software you can search upon, and we'll do a couple searches here in just a moment, and then you can also report upon. There's no exceptions to that. It really is just an open interface from that perspective. The data is yours to manipulate, to import, to export, however you would want. Now, any of the data that's displayed in these grids, you can use that little printer icon there to print this grid out. That's a very quick HTML-based report. But let's actually do a search now, make things a little more realistic. Guys, we use a percentage sign as a wildcard. So if I do something like this, I'm saying, hey, software, I want you to show me all of the boxes where the box ID contains 459. And actually, just so you know, there's a whole section we won't have time to get into today called preferences, where you can change this behavior. And I actually have it set up right now to auto supply those wildcards for me. So I really don't even have to supply those. The software is intuitive to know. Go ahead and apply those wildcards for them. I'm getting the same number of results here, 1,140. This searching, once you've got the data displayed, back to the topic of exporting, you can do the HTML. If you want to be a little fancier with your data, you can take this data and export it out to what becomes a CSV file, which of course you can then open up in various software, Excel, for example, and do whatever additional fancy stuff you want to do with that. And then, of course, besides these ad hoc type reports, there is a whole section of the application dedicated to reports. Scroll through these here really quickly, guys, and we'll actually launch one in just a moment to show you what these look like, but give you a minute just to digest this. Or, of course, you can return to the recording and see all this later. Depending upon the exact configuration of your application, you will get about 30 stock reports as part of the system. Every one of these reports is renderable either as a PDF or an Excel format. Besides just running the report, you can filter these guys 9 ways to Sunday. You can schedule any of these reports, right, guys? So very common examples, often the records management team wants to have these pick list reports waiting for them in the morning so they know for their workday what they've got to go pull for those people who have been requesting them. And then also, guys, really nice feature here. If you don't see the report that's exactly the one you want, you can actually create brand new custom reports and embed those directly into the application interface. So really the sky is the limit in terms of the reports, getting the data out of the software and then delivered the way you want to. Now, as promised, I do want to show you at least one report here. We'll pull up the box pick list report itself. More or less, this is how all of these standard formal reports look with the color scheme and the basic layout of those reports themselves. So guys, it's getting data in. That's some of the manipulation of the data once it's in, and then how you go about getting reports out of the system. Now, in terms of day-to-day functionality, I want to talk, very quickly here again, guys. Mostly this is what people are doing, right? They're in the software, they're creating data, which I showed you a very quick example of that. Number two, once the data is in there, they're performing searches on the data. We'll do a couple of examples of those. As is often the case with physical records, you can't get the information you need right off the screen. You've got to issue what's known as a request. I'll give you a quick example of that. And then we'll move some materials around because we are focused, of course, on physical records, and you got to be able to move those guys around. Folks, there's actually 7 different ways of searching for data within Gimmal Physical. We won't have near the time to get to all of them. I'll show you probably 3 of them and those even very quickly. Option 1 is what we call the quick search. It's how most people actually do all their searching in the software. You saw one quick example there earlier, right? Where I just go like this. I just type in a portion of data, in this case, 459. Really nice feature here. If you hover over rollover, the software will tell you, hey, find all boxes where box ID contains 459. But as you would guess, you're not limited to just a single field in terms of searching here. You can continue to refine this search. You might say, and I'm a terrible typist, so I'm not going to type out records management. I'm just going to put in the REC with the wildcard there, refine my search. Now I'm down to 266 boxes. And you get the idea. With one or multiple of these fields, you can continue to refine your search. In addition to these quick examples that you saw, this quick search supports the use of keywords, things like or and things like the word today. I could, for example, in create date, say, hey, software, show me all the boxes that were created today. It supports partial year searches in terms of the scheduled destruction date. You just put in 2020, and it's smart enough to know it means the entire calendar year. And then it's also got a really nice feature called range searching, guys. And the way range searching works, it's a way for you as an end user to say, you know, what I'm looking for is from somewhere around June 1st of 98. So you can add that into your search criteria. And what the software does, really nice feature, right? Although that exact date may have never been entered, the software is smart enough to know that it falls within the range of dates that were entered. And by the way, guys, this range searching can be date-based, like our example here. It can be alpha-based. It can also be numeric-based. So this is option 1 for searching. This is known as query by example. Option 2, hidden under that button that says switch, much more like your Google type search, right? This is just a toggle, that switch button. You go back and forth between query by example and your Google search. This is really intended for those users that don't even know, right, which field to begin their search in. So they simply type in whatever phrase they want to, and then the software will search across all of the text-based fields simultaneously. Other ways of searching, guys, include some of the things you see here. I'm not even going to show them all to you. I will quickly jump you to advanced query, really intended for your savvy IT type users. You can build very complex queries here, right? You choose from the available database columns, whether they're being housed at the box level or being inherited from elsewhere. So you can certainly do all that. You supply these different operators, the comparison operators in the list here, specify whatever criteria you like, apply what's known as Boolean logic, right? This and or stuff, multiple level sorts. Now, because these queries can be a little time consuming to construct, guys, we do give you the capacity here to name and save these queries for reuse. And when you do save them, you can save them into your own personal library. You can save them into a system-wide library, or you can save them into a security profile of which you are a member of. In any case, if you've previously been to this page here and you've named and saved queries, you can choose them from the existing queries list. As you would guess, when you choose from the list, it's showing you what you previously constructed. And for those technical folks with us today, it actually, yes, it does show you the underlying SQL that's about to be executed against the database. And for those of us that are not so technical, if you're wondering, wow, is that technical gobbledygook going to actually produce anything? You can click on that nice little preview button and it says, yes, it will. There's 21 records that match this search criteria that you're building. Now, guys, hopefully you've seen when it comes to searching for data and how we present those results back to you, regardless of where you initiate your search, right? The quick search, the full text search, the options I didn't even show you, or the advanced query. The results are always coming back to you here in this area that we call the homepage grid. Guys, an important point to note here, both the quick search up here and the homepage grid down here, both of these are completely configurable. You can add as many or as few columns or fields as you want to both. You could put all the data elements here, but then it just becomes sort of a screen real estate issue. So most folks do what you're seeing here, 10 to 12 are the more commonly used fields. You build them in, and this is something you can change over time, both into your quick search and into this homepage grid. Couple quick comments, guys, here about the homepage grid. These grids behave as you would expect. Things like when you click on a column header, the first time it's going to sort ascending, the second time it's going to sort descending. You're probably noticing, right, this nice little graphical control over here to the right. So if we go down here and pick this guy, this particular box that I'm highlighting right now, that box is on that shelf. That shelf is in the Portland warehouse. You're probably seeing some of these windows pop up. These pop-up windows are also configurable, right? It's a way for you to quickly glean additional information about these records without having to navigate anywhere else. So if we look at this record right here at the top, for example, I get the basic information right off the screen here. But if I want to know more about the retention schedule, simply hover over it. It'll give me the additional information. If I want to know more about the owning business unit, hover over it. If I want to know more about the box itself, I can simply hover over it. Guys, you can, as we already mentioned, you can print these grids out. You can export the data from these grids out as well. Now, from there, guys, I want to take you into the requesting functionality. So we talked about data creation, right? How you get it in. Number two, how you go about searching and retrieving that data. Let's talk about the requesting functionality. I didn't explicitly call it out at the beginning, guys. We are trying to save some time here today and stay on the boxes tab. But really what I'm doing here would equally apply to any of the other tabs as well. In fact, boxes and files act almost identically to each other. But since we're on boxes tab, let's talk about it here and talk about the requesting process. The intent here, folks, is for you to roll this software out to the masses within your organization. This is a really important point. Having been at this now for a couple decades, historically, what I've seen is records management is way too centralized, and you have people doing way too much of the work. But with a browser-based application like Gimmal Physical, it makes it super easy for you to roll this out to the masses in your company. If they have a browser and they have a login that you've provided, they have exactly what they need. Remembering, of course, you'll be able to put them into the right security profile so they only do and see the things that they should be seeing and doing. But for those who do get in, right, they log in, they do a search. This is how they go about that request process. They select one or more records of what they need, and they simply come up here and click on request delivery. 9 times out of 10, at least, they're basically done. A lot of information on this page. But for most folks, all they got to do is click on request, and they've initiated the request process. Very quickly, so you know a couple of other options. So here I am logged in as this fictitious person, Thomas Strong. He has a unique ID, which happens to be that string of characters. Here's somebody else down below, Leslie Williamson. If you've got a situation where Tom and Leslie work in the same department and Tom's the one logged in, but he's requesting for Leslie, he can simply select Leslie off the list. You'll notice all that really happens is we replace the unique ID with them. Or what that's specific, I should say, to Leslie. Now, for those of you working with an offsite vendor like Iron Mountain, you'll see some additional information here. In the end, guys, and we'll try to talk about this a little bit later in some more detail, but in the end, very nice integration with Iron Mountain, where we basically replace what's known as their IM Connect product, or they're branded as IM Link. And in the end, what that means for you is you'll manage all of your hard copy physical records right from the Gimmal physical interface itself. No need to use different pieces of software. But concerning requesting, you can change these properties as necessary, a way to add full text comments, and then a nice little optional feature here, just one more way to fulfill request to sort of circumvent that traditional paper-based checkout, check-in process. The scan and email is the real common example here. At any rate, the end user finalizes the request by clicking that button. Now, guys, for every request that is initiated, the software does a number of constraint checks, things like, is this a duplicate request? Does the person already have the item that they're requesting? We support what's known as waitlisting. The records management team has a couple of limits that they can set surrounding the whole requesting process. Things like, how many boxes can an individual have? And if they reach that limit, they try to request one more, the software will tell them right then, sorry, you can't have another one. You got to send something back before you get yet another. And the other limit is time-based, right? Kind of like your public library. If you keep things checked out too long, those people will start showing up on reports. They'll start getting annoying emails should you so configure the system to work that way. So that's the requesting process. Now, if we can convince you, right, that you want to have the end users log in, do their own searching, their own requesting, under the guidance of all the constraints built into the software. There then needs to be some way, right, for you as the records management team to be made aware of these incoming requests. The software that is gives you 3 different ways of knowing about incoming requests. So you can click on any of the corresponding links here. We'll go ahead and grab the Iron Mountain one. This is the way, guys, this is the holding queue, if you will, right? Generally speaking, when you're using Iron Mountain or other offsite vendors, you don't let your end users just willy-nilly request all they want. Rather, you gather those together, you review, reject, approve, whatever the case might be, before you send them in bulk over to the Iron Mountain facility via that submit button. But this is option 1 for knowing about incoming requests. Option 2, guys, is what you saw a little bit earlier. It's this pick list report. Really intended for those of you that are managing your own warehouse or your own central file room, right? You print this pick list, be it box or file, you print it off, you carry it around the warehouse or file room with you as a pulling aid to grab those items off the shelf. Now, a really nice feature here for those of you that have the barcodes and the barcode scanners. What's really cool is if you actually scan these barcodes on this report as you're pulling, what will happen is the software will send an email out to the requester the moment you do that. Really nice feedback for them, right? Alerting them to the fact that you're in the process of working on their request. That way, they're not pestering you. They're not calling down, walking down, emailing, hey, did you get my request? They'll know exactly when you're working on the request via that automated email notification. Nevertheless, this is option 2 for the records management team to know about incoming requests. Option 3, guys, is what I've alluded to a couple of times now. Just know that you can tie an automated email to any of these actions here. A real common one being anytime folks either request delivery or pickup of items, hey, software, send emails to the records management team, alerting them to that fact. And then finally, guys, from the day-to-day perspective, so data creation, data retrieval, the requesting process. Number 4 from day-to-day is the ability to move things around. Now, ideally, you would do this with barcodes and barcode scanners, but you can also do it with the mouse and the keyboard. Like requesting, you select one or multiple records. You tell the software you want to move these. We use the word transfer to mean move. The software says, great, I know you want to move these 2 records. Where do you want to move them to? You could have a default. You could choose from the universe of possibilities, or you could also just choose from this convenience list. I'll save some time and choose Bjorg off the list here and execute the transfer. There's our confirmation. And as you would guess, guys, every single thing that you do here in the software is recorded into a permanent audit trail or history. Even the administrators of your system cannot come in here and change anything about it. It really is, right, the legal record of what happened to this data, reflective of your physical records themselves. Now, moving from day to day, just looking at the clock here, it looks like we're doing okay, but we're going to continue to move at a pretty rapid pace here, guys. There are a couple of other features in particular that I want to dwell upon just to really kind of highlight these. Really, really important. The first one is the whole records schedule, classification, legal holds capability. So I'm going to bring you to those tabs you haven't seen yet. Let's go to retention schedules. I'll make the point here, guys, while I'm bringing up some data. All of these tabs operate exactly the same way. That is, by virtue of being on their own tab, it means every field is searchable. The tab can be built with whatever fields you want. You can import data in, you can export data out, you can produce reports. That'll be true of every single tab. One of the nice things about the retention schedule functionality, the way it stands in the software today, I'm going to focus your attention on just one of these here, ADV 100. If I look at this particular rule known by that unique value, it's a 7-year schedule. And you'll notice right now there's actually 73 boxes that are all currently held under that or associated to that particular record retention code, the ADV 100. Well, one day records management Joe Schmo walks in and he looks at this and says, wow, 7 years. That's not right. Everybody knows that this particular series, ADV 100, is supposed to be 70 years. I don't know who made it 7. So he can change it to 70, right? Single point of change, a very simple change. Now, 2 really nice things happened when Joe Schmo just did that. Number 1, what he has done here has been recorded into the history, as you would expect, right? So here it is. Now, actually, I probably should say Thomas Strong, not Joe Schmo. That's who I'm logged in as. But Thomas here, it shows the date and time. that he updated. He changed retention years from 7 to 70. All well and good. But what's also really nice, remember there's 73 boxes pointing to this particular, what used to be a 7-year series. So if I query those boxes up now, I want to focus your attention here on the scheduled destruction date column. Notice how far into the future these guys are, right? Because Thomas Strong here, he just gave each of these boxes an additional 63 years of life because he changed it from 7 to 70. So really nice single point of change concerning the retention schedule functionality itself. Guys, we want to import this data. We want to house this data within the software so that, as you saw sort of at the beginning of the demo when we talked about data creation itself, come back to that page one more time, right? There's a window on the create page via this control into those record series. The example we did earlier was just picking this. All this data is coming from that record schedule tab. One of the key aspects here, guys, right, is that when you're done creating this record, you want to have, and let's go look at one of these records, you want to have a scheduled destruction date set at some point in time. This field is the magic, right, that allows you to eventually disposition these records. Now, guys, one of the nicest features of the software, apologies, we'll have to go through it so quickly. I'm going to show you the end from the beginning. We have 19 minutes left. I'm going to try to reserve 5 to 10 minutes at the end for any questions that you might have. So I'm going to go at a pretty quick clip here to get through it, but we'll do the best we can. What I want to do here is bring you into the retention module itself. Now, I'll make this point. When it comes to retention/disposition, you can execute that at any level you want to in terms of the trackable items, that is the boxes or the files or even perhaps microfilm. Most folks, of course, execute disposition at the box level because it's just frankly way too much work to go into boxes, pull the files out, but the software supported either way or both ways. In our demo example, this was executed at the box level. Now I want to focus your attention on these first 3 rows in this grid, disposition batch 108. Here's what happened, right? A week or so ago, I came in here on 2/26. I took this date, 1/1/2000, I put it into the target date field, and I clicked on execute. When I did that, I was asking the software to identify all of the eligible records for disposition. When we say eligible, we mean 3 things: that the records have not already been destroyed, because by default, we do keep destroyed records in the system. Now, those records are hidden for most folks, but they are still there. Number 2, we make sure that the record is not on hold. We briefly mentioned holds a few minutes ago. I'll try to go back and show you that screen. And number 3, we make sure the scheduled destruction date is prior to this target date. So when I did this last week, guys, right, the software identified 197 records spread across 21 different departments, batch 108. So what happened here, if we come back to the boxes tab and I now query by that batch number 108, here indeed are those 197 boxes that were included. You'll notice they're spread across different business units or departments. Really nice feature of the software. Unlike the olden days, right, where you had to run disposition one department at a time, that's really no longer necessary. You can run it across the enterprise. The software will do the hard work of segregating, aggregating the data as necessary for each of those owning departments or cost centers or business units, whatever you call it in your organization. So all of these boxes got stamped. They got included into that disposition batch. But what also happened, now bringing you to another tab you haven't seen, the disposition notices tab. If I query by that same batch number here, you're going to see in batch 108, here's all the disposition approval reports. Remember, there were 21 different departments that had boxes eligible for destruction. And here they are. Each one of these gets their own specific disposition approval batch. Here's a quick look at what that report looks like. So this all, guys, amounts to stage 1. Let's come back to the retention module itself, to stage 1 of retention. Records management comes in, they enter a date, they click on execute. The software does 3 things. It creates this first row in the grid, it stamps the boxes, it creates the disposition notices. Optionally, of course, to what I just described, you could tie email notifications. That's an alert, right, for those owners, those records owners, to come into the software. And although you can indeed print those disposition approval reports out, have them wet ink sign it and load it back into the software, what most of our clients nowadays choose to do rather is either go to the update or what's known as the bulk update page. And of course, they would be filtered so they'd only see the boxes that are germane to them. and they would simply come down here and check that box. When they do that, it's a really nice way. It's a legally defensible way to indicate, hey, that the owner of this box came in and checked it on this date and time. Here's their user credentials of who it was that said, yep, I approve for the procession of this box through the disposition batch. At any rate, guys, as you get these approvals back from the records owners, the records management team, you will jump back into the process. You will, via a couple clicks on this page, you will promote all of those that have been approved. Now, in my case, in my demo, I only approved 9 of the 197. But records management now promotes these to the aggregation stage. The idea of the aggregation stage, of course, is for those records custodians. So whether it's Iron Mountain or whether it's your own warehouse, this is where you utilize the disposition pick list, especially for your own warehouse, right, as a pulling aid to go pull those boxes off of the shelf. And then coming back to disposition one more time, once those custodians have done what they're supposed to do, you as records management, you come back in a couple more clicks and you promote these guys, all those that have been, that are still a part of the batch, that are still not on hold, have been approved. You run this last stage, stage 3, the disposition stage. And as you would guess, what happens? Let's come back now and look at the boxes that made it all the way through. This time I'm going to query by batch 108, but only those that made it all the way through. That is, they're deleted. And you'll notice here they are. The indication that they are deleted, right, is this, they're italicized, they're colorized. And if we were to look at any of these records, guys, you would see a couple more things. The software automatically filled in an actual destruction date for you, and then it locked down the functionality, right? If these things have been deleted, you shouldn't be doing any of this stuff anymore. And then finally, guys, under this heading, the last thing that happens here is that certificate of destruction report is created in the software. You would have one of these separate for each cost center or business unit that has records in the batch. So again, super quick overview for records retention and the disposition process. Didn't really have time, guys, to get into all the details of hold, but like all the other tabs, create as many of these legal hold records as you want. And then whether it's one at a time or in bulk fashion, you can take these holds and apply them to either boxes or files, which of course prevents them from going through the disposition process. Guys, from here, I want to jump you to space management. Really intended for those of you that are managing your own warehouse. In the end, guys, this feature does 2 things. Number one, it gives you a quick look as to how full or conversely how empty your warehouse is. So this example here, we're about 62% full. You can actually configure space management for multiple facilities. This guy happens to have 2. We'll just stick with the one. So feature number 1 here, it shows you how full your warehouse is. From a day-to-day perspective, however, feature number 2, really nice stuff here. The idea is if you're about to accession or bring in a number of boxes, in this case, I've got it defaulted to 10, and you want to know, rather than just wandering through the warehouse where the open spaces are, well, let the software do the hard work for you, right? You simply click that go button and it will start looking through your shelving schema to find out where you have 10 open spaces. You can then take this information, you can print it out as just, a shelving aid to where you want to put those boxes. It's got a couple of nice nuances to it as well. So you'll notice all 10 of these open spaces happen to be an area called the floor. Well, maybe you've got some kind of leak going on, right? And the floor's got standing water. So you can do this kind of thing. You can say, hey, space management, I get it. Those are open spaces, but I don't want to use those right now. So let's exclude the floor area. So you can add some filtering mechanisms to this, and lo and behold, it finds a big open space on the mezzanine that actually has a capacity of 40. You can put all of those guys there. One more really nice thing that it does, sometimes reality gets out of sync with the software, right? It's not the software's fault, but it's rather people forgot to tell the software what they did. So you can also use space management to query the system for any shelves that look like they're overstocked, right? And the way you do that is you simply say, software, show me all the shelves where the free space is less than 0. And right, I've got 497 of these guys here where something's not right. This is a nice way for you to then use a portable barcode scanner, ideally, and go do some inventory reconciliation to adjudicate this data and make it accurate. Finally, guys, the last main topic I'll cover here today, we've mentioned it a couple times, is Iron Mountain integration. Really nice integration with Iron Mountain. You saw just a rendition of that on the request page. Please appreciate whether you've got a simplistic Iron Mountain contract that as you're working with a single customer ID or multiple customer IDs, the software will accommodate any of those there. So at a very large scale, guys, and at a very rapid pace. That's a highlight of the Gimmal physical software. I do see we have about 10 minutes left. Try to save some time there. And so I'm going to turn it back over to Shayna here momentarily. We do to see, Shayna, if we have any questions that have come in that we want to address now. If you could read some of those out, we'll be glad to do it. Guys, we do have one more poll that we want to get to before we conclude here today. But Shayna, what say you?
Yeah. Actually, I'll have Austin launch the poll right now, so we can kind of respect everyone's time. Um, there it is. So Tim gave a great demonstration, didn't get to a whole lot of features that this tool still has. He mentioned a couple of times about personalized demonstration. So if you would like a personalized demonstration following this webinar, go ahead and fill that out. If not, fill out not at this time. And then I'm going to hop in. We have a lot of questions, so I'm going to try to go through these quickly. So one in the chat says, does delete completely remove all information regarding the selected box or record?
Yeah, great question. So you may have seen, again, apologies, guys, I was going at such a fast pace there. No, delete simply stamps that record as deleted, which in turn locks down functionality and hides it from most users. But the record in its entirety is still there, both in active tables and in the history. You may have noticed there's another feature called expunge, which does delete that record in its entirety from the active tables. The only reference to it remains in the history that once upon a time this record existed. Usually expunge is used for erroneous data. Delete is used for records that went through their natural life cycle and have just reached the end of it.
You actually just answered another question we had between delete and expunge. So thank you. Can I upload my records retention schedule into the product by department so that a user based on permissions only see their portion of the schedule?
Oh, yes. Great question. So the quick answer there is yes, guys. I want to broaden things just a little bit. Not only the schedule itself, but you can configure security so many ways. One of the really common ways, right, is that users are usually constrained to work with data for the department that they work in. That in turn usually means there's a subset of the overall corporate record schedule or individual record series they're allowed to work with. And so, yes, you set security up. Most of it is role-based. There are some user level settings, and this is one where user by user, you can say, hey, this guy works only in accounting. So throughout the rest of the application, be it boxes, files, record schedules, you name it, he only works with data specific to the accounting department.
And that kind of answers our next question. Does the tool allow for retention schedules to be imported? Sounds like you said yes.
Yes.
And the next one is based on trigger or event-based retention rules. Can, for example, the application integrate with the HR application to determine when an employee terminates and starts the retention clock?
Oh man, another great question. So guys, under the heading of data import, and I know we covered at a very high 50,000 foot level, that's a real common example. So whether it's HR or if you're in the legal sector, you've got a case time and billing management system or whatever else it happens to be. Data from those other systems can be ingested into the software and then inherited down to either the box or the file level. And so let's use HR as an example. If you've got record series where the time span is based upon the termination of the employee, right, a real common one, then the answer is absolutely. If you've got that information in your HR system, which you do, and then you're feeding that information in the Gimmal Physical, then that can be the driving trigger to have the software then say, okay, let's start the clock running on this guy because that triggering event has happened.
Right. The next one is rather than create new boxes individually, can an employee upload a CSV or text file into the product?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I showed you this, but it was so fast. So I can feel your pain a little bit. The answer is yes. If you can get, and this is true, I'll broaden your question a little bit, whether it's boxes or files or schedules or any of the tabs that you saw there in the application. Let me jump back to it here briefly. Any of these tabs, guys, you can import data based upon a CSV format. And again, to emphasize the ingestion of that data. So let's use the question as it was written, boxes. If it's brand new boxes, absolutely. You set up basically what's called an import profile. That's a one-time effort. You set up a spreadsheet, shares that same profile, and then the users just do their Excel, enter tab, enter tab, enter tab, and then it's really cool, right? You can just take that spreadsheet, you can save it into a network share, for example, and the software has a nice utility called File Connect, which is watching that directory. And the moment that list of boxes is dropped in there, it will be automatically ingested into the software.
And the next one we have is, does the product have a quote unquote dynamic hold functionality where after the hold criteria is created, all new checkboxes that enter the system contain the hold criteria are automatically placed on hold as well?
Yeah, great question. And two answers to that. So the first answer is what I briefly mentioned, guys, is you putting holds on either boxes or files directly. And you can do that in bulk fashion, right? You could choose 1,000 boxes, put them on hold simultaneously, but that is just a point in time. Let's apply them. What you can also do actually is you can place a hold on a level above that, in this case, retention schedule. You could say, hey, I want to put a whole retention schedule on hold. That does the same thing in that any boxes or files that are pointing to that schedule get that hold. But then as the question was written, day forward, any new boxes or files that are that are created under that schedule will automatically inherit that hold as well.
Great. And can you forecast destruction by cost center for budgeting purposes?
Yes, great question. So guys, what I showed you was actually the formal step-by-step how you go about doing your retention process. But you don't even have to use that retention module, right, to kick off the official process. You can come, for example, and I think I may have briefly mentioned this, you can come to the boxes tab and you can do this kind of thing. You can say, hey, software, show me all the boxes that are scheduled for destruction in 2021. Well, maybe that's too broad for you. Maybe you actually only want Acme Portland R&D, right? So you could refine this, and this is Portland. There we go. So it's another search, right? You're saying in this case, hey, there's 135 boxes, and well, actually there's Acme R&D and there's quality assurance. So I should have gone a little further with my typing. But you can refine your query here for forecasting purposes to see what is upcoming. And then, of course, as we mentioned, once you've got the data here in these grids, you can either do a quick ad hoc report this way, or again, if you want to get a little fancier, take this data, export it out to a CSV, load it into Excel, and make it look pretty.
Great. And then there was a request to put the features slide back up if you have time to do that, so people could look through the basic functionality. And then somebody asked, they said they got a little lost during the destruction portion. Does the Iron Mountain integration allow us to send destruction orders to Iron Mountain, or do we pull the pick list and send it outside of the application?
Great question. And it's the latter. Guys, we would love to automatically send the disposition information to Iron Mountain, but they will not allow that. And you could probably guess why. They don't want you to destroy your boxes. They want you to keep them there forever. That's just their business model, right? So yes, it is the latter. You do have to take that data that was presented in the software and then externally send that to Iron Mountain, go through there. And you guys are familiar with this, those of you that work with them, the whole PDL, the FDL, and go through that process external to the software.
Wonderful. And does the software communicate directly with Iron Mountain Connect?
It does. It actually replaces IM Connect. They put a wrapper around it, guys, called IM Link, but it's just a one-to-one substitution for IM Connect, which really means, in plain English, you'd no longer use IM Connect for those transactional processes you do with Iron Mountain. That is the requesting of boxes and files to and from.
Great, and I'm going to try to speed through these last couple. We have a lot of questions, and I want to be respectful of time, but they're such good questions. So as the retention series are changed, does the software update automatically based on the series number?
Well, I'm going to give you two answers because I'm not entirely sure I understand the question. But number one, hopefully you saw a quick example with retention schedules. If you change a time span, like I did with this one that went from 7 to 70, all of the materials under that automatically inherit it. But actually, any piece of information you change here, it is again single point of change. Like if I change the number from ADV 100 to ADV 100A, then all of the boxes would automatically inherit that change. Related to all that, guys, remember that some of our clients, what they do, once they have their schedule in the software, they've got some other system that's sending updates. And so you can use the import utility to keep this tab itself up to date. And then, of course, again, the boxes and files would inherit any changes that are made that way.
Great. And then is there an ability to charge departments for storage, retrieval, disposition, etc.?
Oh man, yeah, guys, there is a whole, just not enough time. There's a whole nice feature called the billing module that does exactly that. It allows you both to charge for storage as well as activity-based operations that you are doing. It includes the definition of baseline rates, exceptions to the rule, produces invoices for you. That in and of itself is a demo all by itself. It often goes hand in hand with those of you who have your own warehouses, you're using space management, and then as an add-on, you would get the billing module as well.
Great. And then there's one that says, is there a way to use an electronic checkout system if we need to pull a physical file and make a note that the file is temporarily removed?
Not sure the gist of that question, but I'll take my best stab at it, guys. What some of our clients do is, especially with file folders, and there's a central file room, they will actually set a laptop or a workstation up right near the door to that file room. It's got a tethered barcode scanner, and it's pretty cool, right? What it means is if you are bringing a file back into the file room, you don't have to touch the computer. You don't have to touch the barcode scanner because it can be like a supermarket scanner, right? Where it's always on. You simply pass the barcode on that file underneath the scanner and the software will check it in. If you're checking it out, it does require one more scan, of course. It needs some barcode that means you. So whether you got an employee badge or you're kind of using the laundry board ticket system where they're right there and convenient, if it sees a scan of a file along with your user barcode, it processes as a check out.
Wonderful. There's a pricing question, which we can definitely, I'm not sure this is the right platform for that because we have a couple of other functionality-based questions, but if you reach out, we can definitely give you some pricing details. And the last one I'm going to ask is, how does override compare to hold?
Great question. So the override, when you check that override box, what you're saying is whatever rules that are housed, ignore the rules for how long you're supposed to keep this record. I'm going to tell you what the scheduled destruction date should be. So that box in this example is still eligible for destruction, but at a new scheduled destruction date, whereas hold means indefinite. You put a record on hold, it will never proceed through disposition until you actually remove that hold.
Great. So if you want to throw up our contact information, that would be great. We did have a question of who you can contact for pricing. You can contact info@gimmal.com. That'll take you right there. Fill out a form on our website. Really, any one of these means we will get back to you as soon as possible. There was a question that said, where's the applause button? So yes, very great job, Tim. We thank you for the demonstration. If anybody has any more questions that you can think of, feel free to send us an email at info@gimmal.com. Visit our website. For those of you who are interested in this recording, we're going to send it out between 24 and 48 hours in the form of a thank you email. So please keep an eye out for that. As we conclude, we hope to see everybody for our webinar next week, Information Governance for Microsoft Teams. We thank you all for joining and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.